Okay, let's try another one for number 7. Okay, I'd like you to solve x squared minus 10x minus 1 quantity squared equals 100. X squared minus 10x minus 1 quantity squared equals 100. Ideas on where should I start? Jordan, where should I start? Right, this is going to be a quantity problem. Okay, so this is a q squared equals 100. Now, how do I get rid of the square? Root both sides. Make sure you put in plus or minus. So that'll leave us with q equals plus or minus square root of 100 is 10. We're going to set each part equal. So we have to split this up. Okay, so we got q equals 10 and q equals negative 10. Now, you're not done. Okay, make sure that if you took something out, you put it back. So here, this is x squared minus 10x minus 1 equals 10. And x squared minus 10x minus 1 equals negative 10. What am I going to do next on my left equation? Jackie. Exactly. Subtract 10 from both sides. On this side, you're going to be adding 10 for this problem. So we're actually doing 2 different equations. So these are 2 separate equations. Okay, so we got x squared minus 10x minus 11 equals 0. That can factor to x minus 11 and x plus 1 equals 0. If you set each part equal to 0, we should get a positive 11 and negative 1. Then for your other problem, again, set it equal to 0, so x squared minus 10x plus 9 equals 0. That factors to be x minus 1 and x minus 9. Set each part equal to 0, positive 1 and positive 9. Okay, so again, we ended up with 4 different answers for this equation. Okay, is this horribly hard? Or is this something that, is this horribly hard? Yes, Gabe? Oh no. Are we good on this? Okay, we seem fairly good on this. Okay, we're gonna get just a little bit more difficult. Okay, just a bit. It's not gonna be that bad though. Okay, and then we have 10 examples, so we're almost there. Okay, for number 8, I want you to solve x squared plus 4x minus 4 quantity squared equals 64. X squared plus 4x minus 4 quantity squared equals 64. What's my first step? Aaron, what's my first step? Put in the quantity. Okay. Now, it's not absolutely mandatory that you use quantities here, but I personally think it's a little bit easier to see. Okay, so make this a quantity problem. It makes it a little bit easier to deal with. It's not quite as overwhelming. Then to get rid of the square, we're going to root both sides. Make sure you put in your plus or minus. We're going to end up with q equals plus or minus 8. Split these up. So split these into 2. So q equals positive 8. Q equals negative 8. Now replace what I took out. So x squared plus 4x minus 4 equals 8. And x squared plus 4x minus 4 equals negative 8. Where would I go from here? What's my next step, Thomas? Move the 8, exactly. So subtract the 8, both sides. And this one you're going to add the 8. That'll leave us with x squared plus 4x minus 12 equals 0. This is factorable. What does that factor into? Tamara, what does that factor into? This one. What multiplies to give you negative 12 and adds to give you positive 4? Perfect. Which one should be positive? Which one should be negative? Positive 6, because you want your bigger number going with the middle sign. So positive 6, negative 2. Then if you split these up, we get negative 6, positive 2 for answers. On this side, if you simplify, we get x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. That again is factorable. That would give you x plus 2 and another x plus 2. So if you have the same thing, how many times do you have to write that answer? Just once. Okay, so since you have the same thing, you only need to write the answer one time. Okay, you do not need to write out negative 2 twice. Okay, any questions? Okay, the last two are just a little bit different. Okay, same concept, but they are just a little bit different. Okay, if I gave you x plus the square root of 2, quantity squared, equals 8. Looks just a little bit different, okay, because it's not a trinomial, not 3 things inside, it's just 2 inside the parentheses. So where do you think I'm going to start here? Ying, where do you think I start on this one? Exactly, we can make this a quantity problem again. Okay, so quantity squared equals 8. Then if I'm going to get rid of the q, or excuse me, get rid of the square, root both sides. Make sure you put in your plus or minus. So your next step is going to be q equals plus or minus. Can I break anything out of a root 8? What does that break into? 2 root 2. Okay, now that you have your q set equal, we're going to replace it. So replace it with x plus root 2 equals a positive 2 root 2, and x plus root 2 equals the negative 2 root 2. Now this x is attached to the root 2 by addition, so to get rid of it we need to subtract. So if you subtract root 2, subtract root 2. You need to think of these kind of like x's. Can you do 2 root 2 minus root 2? What does that give you? 2 root 2 minus root 2. Travis is not here. 2 root 2 minus root 2. I don't know who that person is. Sarah, what do you think you got with 2 root 2 minus root 2? Not 2. I want you guys to think of these kind of like x's. If I give you, what's the coefficient? What's the number in front of this root 2? A 1. That's really 1 root 2. So think about this. What would be 2x minus 1x? You'd have 1. You still keep the same coefficient, so you still keep the 1. The root 2 is still there. Okay, it's kind of like 2x minus 1x. That root 2 does not cancel out. That would be division if they cancel out. Okay, this one is just subtraction. So here, that is one of your answers. Now, if you just wrote it as root 2 without the 1 in front, that's the same thing. Okay, it's kind of like writing just an x as opposed to a 1x. It's the same thing. Here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to subtract root 2, subtract root 2. Add in the coefficient of 1 if it helps you. Okay, you don't have to, but add it in if it helps you. The negative 2 root 2 minus another root 2 gives me what? Dominique, what does that give me? Perfect. Negative 3 root 2. And that's your answer. Okay, so 2 different answers here. Positive root 2 and negative 3 root 2. Anybody have questions on how I did that? We're good? Great. Last one. Number 10. Excuse me. Number 10. Last one. If I gave you in parentheses root 7x. Now, notice when I write this, the root does not go over the x. It's next to it, okay? Plus 2, quantity squared, equals 25. Root 7x plus 2, quantity squared, equals 25. Where do you think I'm going to start this? AJ, where do you think I'm going to start this? Yep, we're going to replace it as a quantity. So q squared equals 25. To get rid of that square, you can root both sides. Make sure you put in a plus or minus. So we get q equals plus or minus 5. I'm going to split this into 2. Q equals 5. Q equals negative 5. Now, if you take something out, you have to put it back. So we have root 7. X is next to it, but not underneath. Plus 2 equals 5. And root 7x plus 2 equals negative 5. Make sure that what was inside your parentheses, you're not changing that, okay? The only thing you're changing, the only thing you're splitting into 2 is the positive and negative 5. Okay, there's nothing that changes on that left side, though. Now, what would be your next step to solving? If we're just looking at this left one, what's the next step to solving? I don't know who any of these people are. Savannah. Exactly. So start by subtracting 2. Okay, if you subtract 2, that leaves us with root 7 times x equals 3. How do I undo that root 7? The root 7 is attached to the x by what operation, Selena? By add, subtract, multiply, or divide right here. It's attached by multiplication, so how do I undo that? Divide it. So divide away the root 7. Now, am I done when I get x equals 3 over root 7?
No,
You're not. What do you have to do? Rationalize the denominator. So multiply by root 7 over root 7. So our actual answer here is 3 root 7 over 7. Okay, so it's nothing that you can't handle. It's just taking it to the next level because now we know how to rationalize denominators. If you had an I, you would know how to get rid of the I. Stuff like that. Okay? Same thing on this side. I want to subtract the 2 from both sides. That'll leave us with root 7 times x equals negative 7. Divide away the root 7 because it's attached by multiplication. Then we can't have a radical in the denominator, so multiply by root 7 over root 7. When you simplify that, we get negative 7 root 7 over, and then a whole 7. Are we done?
You can reduce it.
You can reduce it, exactly. You can reduce these whole 7s. Okay, remember, you can't reduce something underneath the radical, but I can reduce the whole numbers. So your actual answer here is just negative root 7. Okay, so 2 different answers. 3 root 7 over 7 and negative root 7. Okay, homework for this objective is you are going to be working on page 279. We're going to do numbers 3 through 11 and also worksheet 3. You are doing numbers 1 through 15. So it's a little over 20 problems for homework. Okay. Does anyone have questions? Do we have any questions?